I remember being told a few years ago that what you start doing in life is not necessarily what you're going to end up doing. And I was told this in the context of starting my business. I used to have my own business back in the UK, and I was told that the business that I would start doing wouldn't necessarily be the same business I would end up doing, which actually turned out to be very true advice. So it was interesting because thinking about that made me also reflect on something that I'm considering at the moment concerning my brand and my YouTube channel. Because, as most of you know, for like the past 3 years, I've had my YouTube channel and I've been focusing on sharing the beauty and reality of life here in South Italy. And I submitted my channel just last week for a mini audit with another fellow YouTuber. And it was really interesting the feedback I got from that audit because essentially the feedback was it wasn't clear who my audience was from my content. The only thing that was clear was that there was a connection to South Italy. And this was really interesting for me to listen to because I hadn't really thought about it before. I had thought that the common thread was South Italy and that was enough to mean that I had a distinct audience. But actually, the reality is somewhat different. And so, based on the back of that, I ran a couple of polls on my channel and it was really interesting the results I got back. So, the majority of people watch my channel because they plan to move to Italy, not because they plan to visit Italy. And the majority of people want to know about everyday life here, shops, services, restaurants, experiences, and not necessarily about what to eat. So it's been really, really fascinating for me the last week or so to really digest this information and decide like where I'm going to take my channel and my brand going forward. And of course, I'm going to really maneuver it more towards people who are interested in moving to Italy because that is who my audience currently are, and people who are living in Italy already because they can relate to the experiences that I share. And also people who love Italy, because if you love Italy, you're curious about knowing the ins and outs of the country in general. So the content I produce, regardless of, whether you're visiting or moving to Italy, you'll still love it anyway. But it's just got me thinking about something really fundamental in human nature, and that is the ability to pivot. And it's something that I think sometimes we're scared to do. Like if you have created something, whether it's a business, a brand, an identity, even, and you realize that maybe that isn't quite working for you anymore, or maybe people are looking for something different, sometimes it can feel really scary to completely pivot and do something else entirely, or kind of change direction with where you're headed. But it's actually really important because up until that audit, I hadn't really recognized myself that I was catering to two very different audiences. And as a result, sometimes my messaging could be quite mixed. I would talk about lots of different things connected to South Italy, but I wasn't necessarily talking directly to the people who needed to hear the message I had to share. And so I'm really thankful for the fact that I can recognize the importance of pivoting. But I also recognize that many people don't understand when is the time to pivot in their life, even like if it's time to do something different in your life. You've been doing the same old for year upon year and you've not seen much progress. Well, now maybe it's time to try and do something different and see where that takes you instead. And there is just such an important element to this that I wanted to focus on in today's episode, because life isn't just one straight road. We might like to think it is. We might like to think that it's one straight road. There's a few ups and downs here and there, but essentially it's one straight path. But it isn't. It's full of twists and turns, lots of ups and downs. And that essentially requires you to be able to pivot. And it always comes back to the central issue of change. Like, change is the one thing that we are most scared of as humans. We are scared to make changes. This is why people will talk about dreams until they run out of breath, but never act on them, because they are actually scared of the consequences of that dream becoming a reality, even if it's something that they think they really, really want. It is the reality of that dream that scares them. And the fact that they're probably going to have to sacrifice some things, change their character, grow as a person, put the hard work in, that actually makes the change seem really scary. So I think it's really interesting to reflect on this, because how would your life look if you were willing to make more changes? If you were less scared of change and the fear of the unknown, if you were more flexible and could pivot easier, how would your life look? Because I guarantee you it would look probably a lot different compared to how it looks now. And that's the game changing action of of changing and pivoting essentially. And I think, it doesn't just mean that you have a business that you need to consider this. It's your everyday life, it's your experiences, it's those things that we talk about doing but never act upon. And we're full of excuses. Of course, I can tell you in like 30 minutes straight all of the excuses that I hear on a regular basis from people who want to do things but haven't quite managed to do it yet. Usually in that mix are the excuses of not enough time, not enough money, not being sure what to do. There are usually lots of excuses, but they tend to be the top three that I hear on a regular basis. But the fact is, you can create time. Not everything you have to pay for. You can work with what you have. And, in a way, you can figure out what you need to do if you take the first step. Like taking it back to how I started this episode, what you begin doing isn't necessarily what you will end up doing. I have pivoted and made lots of changes to my branding over the 3 years that I started this whole Ms. Brittany concept. I've changed the branding, I've changed the logo, I've changed the style of my videos on YouTube. I've changed a lot of things and I keep evolving and changing and growing as I learn what my audience wants and needs from me. And I think that is the key to success in any aspect of life. Listening more to yourself, listening more to what you want and what you need. If your life is more based on personal goals and aspirations, listening to your audience, listening to what they want and need. If you're running a business or you have some kind of social media following, and just essentially being able to go with the flow of life. This is a concept that ties really beautifully into the Italian philosophy of just living in the moment a little bit more, going with the ebb and flow of life. And I really agree with this aspect because you cannot be rigid in every single aspect of your life. You need to have the ability to change, to go with the flow, and to pivot where necessary, because I think that is how you will avoid stagnation. And that is how ultimately you will find success. And I talk about kind of change and what it means in my book, Lessons from the Boot. I will put the link in the show notes if you're interested in getting a copy. It is based on season 1 of this very podcast, but I dive a bit deeper into each of the lessons that I shared in season 1 with actionable tips and takeaways so that you can really implement these changes into your life. I will see you in the next episode.